The United Nations marked the conclusion of annual campaign 60 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. Ambassadors of 16 countries and heads of UN agencies traveled to every region of Kazakhstan to help raise awareness of this issue. Like in many countries, this issue is acute in Kazakhstan as well. According to UN, every 6 women in Kazakhstan experiences violence per year. Nevertheless, the country is taking various measures to improve the situation in this regard, including the assistance of the international community. Earlier this week, we recorded an exclusive interview with the Ambassador of Canada to Kazakhstan, Mr. Alan Hampson, and UN Resident Coordinator for Kazakhstan, Ms. Michaela Friberg-Story. They shed light on the specific steps being taken by Kazakhstan and the international community in addressing this issue. Please watch the fragment of the interview. Thank you very much for both of you to come here in our studio. It's a pleasure to have you. So let me start from this point, Ms. Friberg-Story. From your perspective, what are the most pressing challenges in addressing gender-based violence in Kazakhstan, and how do you believe international collaboration contributes to overcoming these challenges?
Well, thank you so much for having us and for bringing up this important topic. Domestic violence is a global challenge, and we see that oppression of women and girls around the world is something that every country struggles with, also Kazakhstan. The most important issue for Kazakhstan is to look at the issues that relates to both legislation, to political and economic empowerment of women, and of course changing social norms and behavior. When it comes to the collaboration with the international community, I think that as across the board, Kazakhstan has a very strong collaboration with the international community and specifically with the United Nations, and we stand ready to continue this dialogue. Great progress is being done.
Dear Ambassador, may I ask you this? In 2019, National Geographic published a list of the safest countries in the world for women to live in. And Canada was one of the top countries in this list. What key strategies and policies do you believe have contributed to Canada's success in this area? And how might these lessons be applied in the context of Kazakhstan?
It's interesting, you know, I wasn't aware of that statistic. I'm sure it's true, but you know, we still have a ways to go. Your viewers might be surprised to hear that in Canada, you know, we still have 2/3 of women who 2/3 of Canadians who know a woman who's been the victim of physical, sexual or emotional abuse. And every night in Canada we still have about 6,000 women and children staying in shelters because they're not safe at home. And 300 women were turned away from shelters because there's not enough space for them. So we're still working. We acknowledge that, as Madame Friberg-Story said, that this is a global challenge. But we are proud of the road we've traveled. You know, when I was young, in 1989, we had a critical sort of moment in Canada where there was a massacre. It was on December 6th, so just last week was the anniversary, where you know, a madman killed 14 women at a technical college. And this was very personal for me. My mom at the time was studying in university in the same city, so we thought, what if he'd gone there instead of to the different college? And this really sparked a national conversation that's already more than 30 years ago, and I think that helped us tackle the issue as a society to some extent with national action plans on ending gender-based violence, and really a national conversation about how important it is that every member of the society you know, commit to nonviolence and contribute to a safe place for women and girls across the country. So that's a long road that we've traveled. Today our gender-based violence strategy is containing a lot of the sort of common points you'll find in countries around the world: prevention of gender-based violence, support to victims and survivors and families, and work towards a responsive justice system. I think you know, what's been successful in our approach is an ability to face facts, even difficult facts, and have that national conversation about what's driving violence in families or in our society, and take the necessary steps to create a safe society for women, including, as I mentioned, the last point of our strategy on a responsive justice system. We need to make sure that the system, that police facing women who come to report complaints, they're listening, they believe the victims, and they take action. So these are some of the things that have worked for us in Canada, but we still have a road to travel.
Miss Friberg-Storia, you're originally from Sweden, aren't you? Sweden, it's another country that achieved huge success in preventing gender-based violence. Can you discuss the role of legislation to create this safe environment? Is the laws strict in Sweden?
Well, first of all, I think, like Ambassador Hamza was saying, it's not no country is free from this, and nor is Sweden. We also have a number of deaths every year where women are killed by a close partner. And as long as the home is the most dangerous place for a woman to be, we have serious issues. I think one of the greatest legislative changes in Sweden that has had a positive impact was in the early 1980s, when the law was shifted so that the person who made the allegation, the victim, the woman in this case, no longer needed to testify and be the witness herself, but other people could witness, and the prosecutor would have to follow up. And I know that this is the change in the legislation that has happened also here in Kazakhstan, that there can be witnesses, video recordings, something else. And this, I think, is absolutely central, because then you are actually creating a system where the system looks after the woman, the survivor, and you're not putting all the responsibility on her. Of course, as United Nations, we argue for a criminalization of domestic violence. And I would like to say that there is something very odd when the person that you have a close relationship with, when that person should be someone who looks after you, protects you, and vice versa. When it's a lesser crime when that person beats you than when you're beaten by a stranger on the street. So for me, it should almost be worse when you get beaten in the family than by a stranger on the street. However, I think it's important to underline that the laws themselves are not going to stop the violence. We need to empower women and girls politically and economically, and we need to change our societal norms. Some say that in Sweden we have very strong gender traditions, the old Vikings, but you know, you have the old nomads here as well with equally strong, strong women. So I'm not sure that we need to go back in history. I'm quite sure that we can fix this here and now for all of us.
Yes, it's true. Dear Ambassador, may I ask you this? Could you please tell us more about the campaign, 60 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an annual global campaign to raise awareness about the imperative to take action against gender-based violence. The United Nations leads each year with a number of activities, and this year there was no exception, with some really interesting work at the Nurlijol, I think it's called, train station, and other conferences, gatherings of Central Asian women leaders, and so on. One element of this year's campaign that was a bit unusual, where Canada played a role working with UN partners, was to organize contests among students at universities and schools and high schools in 18 cities across Kazakhstan, including some of the smaller cities like Taraz, Zhezkazgan, Taldykorgan, Rider, where students debated about gender-based violence, did paintings or case studies, depending on the level of the school, to really engage the creativity and passion of students to identify ideas and solutions on gender-based violence, and I think to really raise the awareness across the country about the importance of this issue. And then at the conclusion of the contests, we organized for 16 ambassadors and I think 5 UN agency country directors to travel across the country and visit with the students in each of those schools and universities to hear their ideas, have some dialogue, and present awards and sort of engage in a bit of a ceremony for the participants and the winners. So this was something new, where we had a huge international participation, traveling across the country, and I think trying to connect with that passion of students and deliver that message all across the country. You know, it's only a first step. Obviously, we weren't in every school and every university, but I think it's a nice initiative to get out of the Astana and Almaty maybe bubble and have these conversations in a broader part of the country. I myself went to Taldykorgan, where unfortunately there were some distressing incidents of violence against women this year, as there were in other parts of the country, and so I was proud to have a really rich conversation at Jettisu University with strong support from the university, from local government and national government, and we were able to have a really rich conversation with the students. So I think it was only one element of the campaign this year. There were many other components, but it's one that I know was rich and exciting for the students involved and for all of us ambassadors and UN heads who had a chance to meet the brightest across Kazakhstan.
And I think I have to tell you, while I have an opportunity, thank you very much for both of you for your work in solving these problems, our problems. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.